okay?
Okay, we are now recording. And we may even be live, I'm not sure, we'll figure it out.
The Board of Zoning, they're open for business on the 8th of November, 2021.
We have before you a duly advertised public hearing submitted by 4H Construction. 4H Construction is the lessor or the contractual buyer of the property. It is still in the name of NEC Construct or NEC Properties Investments. But 4H Construction actually made the application. They do have a valid contract, and they are the applicant Eric here is the owner of the property. Is here to answer any questions or make presentation. We took this request, and it's for townhouses. We're not here tonight because townhouses are a legal use. They're allowed to do townhouses in this particular zoning district. The property is zoned R2, and townhouses are permissible, very similar to the ones that were built on Dillard Street, which has the same zoning. If you're familiar with these properties down on Dillard Street. The question tonight is the rear yard setback. Okay, the lots are such that in order to meet the 35-foot front setback, and I think these guys want that because we don't want that parking pulling out in the street necessarily. So we want to make sure that that front setback is met because of the size of the unit and my insistence that we try to keep as much up front with the parking that they're only able to provide a 20-foot rear setback. Typical for a home or a single family in that neighborhood or in that zoning district would be 25 feet, okay? They're asking for 20 simply because we're keeping them to the fullest distance in the front, because that'll be a parking area. Instead of them pulling into the street, it is a slow street. East 4th Street doesn't have a huge amount of traffic, but it does keep the cars where they can make the turn and come out of the property without going directly into traffic.
That no on-street parking.
And no on-street parking, right. And so the request is to vary from 40 feet, which would be the standard for townhouses. But remember, the typical in the neighborhood for a single family is just 25 feet, or a duplex would be 25 feet. This is a 40-foot setback because the ordinance says 40 feet, that's why. And I guess they're trying to, because of the density, trying to create more yard and that sort of thing. It's 5 units. I believe it's going to be these one-story. If you look in your packet, the colored picture right there, is the approximate appearance of the front of the building. Okay. There is a
It shows only 4, but it'll be 5.
55, but we also have this second attachment. It still shows the 5 units.
That's not the way.
There's 5 units, and the rear setback is the question. And townhouses just by ordinance currently say you got to have more setback than you would for a duplex or a single family, which are also permissible uses. Townhouse does not need a rezoning or a conditional use permit. It is a permissible use in the R2 zoning district. And the difference between what we traditionally think is townhouses, which are side by side, multifamily or an apartment would allow units on top of each other. That's really the difference by our zoning designation. If they're one on top of the other, it's in a multifamily or apartment. If it's side by side, not to exceed 8 units in a building connected, those are considered townhouses. Okay.
And me or the contract, the builder, I guess we're one and the same ultimately, but it's going to be in his entity. In essence, I told Philip it's not a proffer because it's not necessary, but it would be a 6-foot vinyl fence along the whole rear of the property. It's the same deal that was done over on Dillard Street. It's got the same setbacks. You can obviously see it'll increase the value of all neighboring areas.
So you know what Eric's talking about when we did the BZA. You guys may or may not have been on here. I'm sure you weren't, Jake, but when this was done, probably in 2015, the townhouse standard was that the 2 buildings have to be 40 feet apart, and it was varied down to I think 20 on the side setbacks on or the separation between the two buildings. And we just use this as an example. But those buildings were supposed to be 40 feet, again, by our zoning ordinance, and the BZA varied it down.
Same builder,
20.
same everything. I just did that for reference for two things, the parking, and then obviously the track record of having a nice property, what it would do for the neighborhood.
And you are saying that you are gonna provide the 2 parking spaces?
Yeah,
for
we're
the
not
owner.
asking for any variance on parking. We've got plenty of parking. There's a big ditch right there currently, so that would actually be culverted in, it would be filled in.
I will tell you too that, if we used our 15% side yard setback, I think you got a 150-foot depth of the line, it would be about a 22-foot setback. But in our zoning ordinance, it requires on a corner lot to be 35 feet for sight distance, so you're not too close to the corner where you can't see, and he is not quite giving up a whole unit, but if he could find 18 feet, he would be able to get another unit in there, but there's been no request to vary that 35 corner, which is important, so you don't have people that can't see around the corner or pulling out, have difficulty driving.
The goal wouldn't to cram them in there and just make it just unsightly for the neighborhood. It's to try to improve everything and also provide good housing for the community, so.
Have any of the neighbors been contacted?
It's part of the state code and part of our obligations on any public hearing for planning commission, town council, or the board of zoning appeals. We have to notify all adjoining property owners. I think this gentleman is here because he received a letter. And then we do have a notarized statement saying that the letters were sent out to the adjoining property owners.
And we own the property
Clarence went, okay, yeah, so he was
just
on the
past
left.
it, so we own the adjoining property on the right of it.
Okay.
It's a single story, 201 East Fourth Street.
We're obligated to, state code says you gotta do it, and we probably overkill it if it's catty corner, we still go ahead and send
So
it.
it
It's a question we're
was,
going
it was 7 adjoining property owners that received a letter.
Good.
You have any questions, sir?
The property that you own, where it's located where?
The property that we're talking about here, it's everything from Oak Street all the way back on East Fourth Street to the first house. Used to be an old 2-story house there.
I know you're talking about they tore it down.
Yeah,
Tore it down.
some gentleman tore it down by
Yeah.
himself,
Yeah, he did.
piece by piece.
Yeah.
It took me the best of shingles off and drag on feet and bag them up and carry them off the landfill.
Alright,
And that's who I purchased it from, was that gentleman.
alright, so you talking about right there, okay.
Yes, sir. But it wouldn't front Oak Street. You would actually turn on East Fourth Street
In
and
front
pull
of.
in.
So it's gonna front
Right
Fourth
across from,
Street.
It would front Fourth Street.
From Mr. Neal.
Yes,
Gotcha.
correct.
Alright, so the duplex there, what you gonna do? Tear that down or renovate it, the one adjacent to you?
That one, no, that's not,
You didn't own it,
yeah,
Okay, I just
different
wanted.
property owner.
yeah, that's I don't know who, Kelly Cheney manages that one. I don't know.
Well, it'd be an adjacent property, huh?
I talked to Kelly about it. She said that they were
I think
agreeable.
Sissy Pollock used to own it, or Scotty Morton's wife.
Scott Warren's is-
She used to own it, but I don't know if she still
It's
does.
somebody out of town now.
So the 40 feet is basis for parking?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Just wanna get
It would be paved in the front. The front will look pretty much identical when it comes to the parking with sidewalk up to the building and then flower beds and then the building itself.
So it's gonna look, the building will not look like that, but the parking will be right there in the front for the homes like
Yeah,
this, like this is here. Yes, uh-huh.
Dillatry, it's the same builder, same guy, so.
And I guess, so Eric, this is what they're proposing to look like right here, so do you have this drawing?
Yes,
Okay.
He's actually leaning towards the same thing I'm leaning towards behind Goodwill. Older rentals, trying to get to 55 and older, cause it's a need for it, so. That's why he wants to do single story. If he went up and down, he could fit a lot more in there, but
That wasn't.
I get the discount at lunch.
Well, how many acres there?
it's,
Less than an acre.
yeah, it's less than an acre. It's 100 and,
150?
is it in that?
You got the dimensional on the line.
130. 130 is the building itself.
Yeah, I think those lots are more than 130.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
240, I think, or something. It's pretty deep.
I'm gonna say there is probably,
It's not,
Don't take it to the bank, I can do it now.
the distance from Oak Street down Fourth Street is not the issue. The distance is the depth if you're looking from Fourth Street.
If you're looking from Fourth Street back.
That's what we're requesting as the variance there.
So the land perked and everything for it?
It doesn't need to, being that the, yeah.
Town sewer.
It will be, now I will tell you, yes, there will be, need to be some dirt brought in and, cause it's low in one spot, yes,
Yeah, that's what I was looking at that.
yeah. So,
Is this gonna be, are you on the same side of the street, or are you gonna be across the
Opposite
street?
side.
Okay,
Opposite side.
okay.
Yeah. Cause that property's down on the corner, and I'm in the middle,
Okay.
on the right.
you're that White House,
Mm-hmm.
right across from the one that we just renovated on the inside.
Right,
Okay.
yeah,
Does a board member have a question? Concern?
I do not.
No, I drove by and looked at it today,
Miss Beal did her homework.
and I drove by the Dillard Street apartments, and they look nice. He does a good job maintaining the,
And I'll be
The
the one
land
that
in the back
maintains it.
with the
I'll be
rocks
the one
up.
that's there
Looks
weekly
good.
maintaining it, so.
We've been blessed lately. If you look at, what's going on down on Tavern Street, not only these, but,
yeah, the house down there.
the stuff that's, we've been fixing up houses and stuff, but there's also a pretty daggone nice, apartment complex that's going in over there. And they've been nice so far. I mean, we've been lucky. We had some requests out on the Courthouse Road for some stuff that I thought was gonna probably not be as nice, but I think the developers have, or the buyers of the property have realized maybe single family is gonna be a little better than that. So I think that's gonna turn out good. I hope so anyhow, but, we've got several subdivisions working, and for the most part, the homes that are being proposed are not. You know, we've really struggled with the Jim Walker homes, a lot of them, down on Tavern Street and Broad Street. We actually had to demolish several because they had very little insulation, and they really had a lot of water and water damage problems in them, so, you know, we're glad to see good housing stock coming down, anything we do, to see it improve.
Yeah, when it rains, some of that property, the water's gonna settle, especially on my side.
No, all that would, that whole pipe would get culverted in and then they pave over top of it.
Yeah.
There's
we don't
plenty of site
ditch
work to be
anymore.
done.
Okay.
Cause he's gotta tie his parking lot into the street. So,
Right.
Yeah, there's gonna have to be a culvert the entire length. Or at least the entire length of the parking lot. I don't know if you would leave an open section right there, though.
Do you have any more concerns, Mr. Lynn?
No, because, I'm familiar with that property that you purchased and everything, and also the house that you just renovated, I'm familiar with that, with my former neighbor and stuff, you
Yep.
lived there.
So it'd be 5 units, not 6. I mean, I think originally it was 6, and I think the developer finally settled back down on 5.
Yeah, you can put 5 on there.
Yeah.
Easily.
Mr. Chairman, you have any questions?
No, you asked my question earlier.
So do we wanna open the public hearing and close the public hearing?
Ooh, I thought we already had, but I guess we could formally.
And we just open up the board of appeals for, public. But,
Anything you wanna add?
Mr. Nguyen,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Nguyen has already spoken, right?
Right. If you have any other questions, you're more than welcome to come to the mic and pose anything you had.
No, it would be nice, you know, to have, something on that spot. When I first moved there, it was two-story house,
Yeah.
you know, abandoned.
You're gonna see some new construction in your neighborhood too on Birch Street. We're getting ready to, in fact, we're ready to sign the contracts and everything's gonna be antique lights on Birch Street,
Okay.
going to the ball
That's
fields
my
and all that.
concern. Street lights.
Mhm.
And also, see, where I live at, you know, it's all paved asphalt. And to my understanding, where Mrs. Cousin lives, that's supposed to be an alleyway with all that.
Actually, I think that's an extension of, Harris Street.
Street.
I think that's actually a street, not so much an
There's a heck
alley.
of a pothole in that corner.
Oh, yeah.
It's an old, it has the equivalent value of an alley, but I think it's actually a platted street. I think it's an extension of Harris Street that comes down through there.
Come down through there.
Yes, sir.
Well, now, my question, will that street one day will be asphalt, okay?
I don't have immediate plans to do it, but I guess if it were a petition from the or from the community, it is town-owned property. There's a couple problems. There's a great big oak tree in that corner. Tremendous oak tree that Mr. Cousins was always after me to get the dead limbs cut out of and everything.
Yeah.
And we did have some problems when we tried to do some improvements, but Mr. Varner has passed.
You usually have a new owner now.
Yeah, there was some reluctance on some of the property owners to participate in us getting on the property and doing some of the ditch work.
Yes, sir.
But I think Mr. Varner has passed away, and I think they may have sold the property.
It's a Biddle guy that owns it now.
Okay, the property's been sold,
Matt.
but I do think if we're gonna do it correctly over there and pave it and do stuff, we gotta get rid of that big oak tree, which sits partially on Mr. Varner's property and partially on town property.
Okay, one last thing.
Yes, sir.
What about, graveling?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. If we got a pothole or something, we need to go down there and get it, yeah.
Cause there is a nice sized pothole there
Hmm?
by, and the construction's gonna take place, heavy equipment, trucks. I think that needs to
Okay.
be,
Jennifer can make a note of it, and we do a work order in the morning, get the guys.
thank you.
Would we rather wait until the construction is done and then maybe smooth out the road and fill in the pothole? Or-
It's just gravel. No, I would go
Pour some
and do it.
gravel
Okay.
on it.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So we now hereby close the public.
All right.
First, before we do that, Mr. Nash, do you have anything?
I'm good.
Okay.
Covered just about everything. It's pretty simple. It's not straightforward. Nothing crazy.
So the public is hereby closed. Are we ready to take a vote?
I think
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance request by 4H Construction on East 4th Street.
I'll second.
Give it a second.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
You have any other questions about anything going on, or questions about the project or projects or anything going on with that? I invite any of you, if y'all want to, come by the office, I can show you all the stuff that we've got cooking, and I think we're gonna see pretty quickly a, building started on College and Second, where the water tank used to be. We did the zoning permit, and it looks like they're gonna proceed on with their building permit.
Is he gonna be working on both buildings at the same time, the Church Street and the water tank project?
I spoke with the developer this morning, and now that we're kind of, the plans are done for Second and College.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to set them, he sent it to me in a Dropbox this afternoon, and, so it's my expectation that he'll be coming to get the restaurant. But I do think he's gonna wanna come to the planning commission, because I do think he wants to put some second floor apartments in there, and that is not part of the current zoning. It's zoned for BG, business general, and in order to put any residential and business general, you have to have a conditional use permit. But that'll go to planning commission and council, and I would say within the next 30 days, you'll probably see that report. Make sense?
So he's gonna probably start by first of the year, weather permitting?
I think he'll start on those apartments by the first of the year, whether permitted. I don't know about the other, because I haven't seen a set of drawings, so I don't know how far accelerated. I think he probably still needs to get his zoning.
Where
Has
is
he-
this?
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sure.
Yes.
Has he let out if it's still the same plan as he originally pitched, or just out of curiosity, originally it was supposed to be a cidery?
I think, the cider was at one time what he was gonna do. I think it's gonna be a trapezium package plant, where they make trapezium brew, which is part of what Dave does over in Petersburg now. But I think it's gonna be smaller. If you go to Bedford, he's got a facility that he's gonna, I think, model this very closely after. And it's a smaller scale plant. It's not the huge tanks, it's smaller tanks. And, I think Dave has even made the proposition in his council chambers before that it's gonna be like a small, reduced size tank. And, so, another place for people to eat and warm
That'll
up.
be a restaurant too, right?
And be a restaurant, yeah.
Well, I've been to his place in Petersburg on Third Street, I've been there a couple times.
Have it.
Have
Oh, okay.
It's a nice place.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah.
So, I think that's what you're gonna get, but I think you'll see a zoning request for next month. gonna have a planning commission probably the very end of November, and it may be even that we can get on the November agenda for planning commission.
Cool.
All right,
Yeah,
Chairman,
All
would
right.
you like to adjourn the meeting at 6:25?
We would.
All right.
And adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Nguyen, Mr. Nash,
Thank you, Mr. Bagley.
and zoning members.
Look forward to making it look better.
You got potholes on the way to